This guy is phenomenal. The Power of Active Listening, episode 5 with Arman Wahab, owner of Greenstone Private Wealth. He will demystify 6 topics, but before he does that, we will devour some great food. Back to the topics. Dark truth about government retirement plans, irresistible Italian secret sauce, active listening, how virtual meetings enhance connection, unlocking cultural riches, and hidden power of insurance, becoming your own banker. Make sure to stay till the end for the golden nuggets. I'm Matt Mack, and I welcome you to Bloody Mavericks, where sanity takes a back seat. Murhaba and ciao, come stai?
Well, what an entrance. Thank you very much for having me. That was amazing.
Thank you for being here, Arman.
Sure.
It's great to have you. We're gonna start with the part which is our background.
Yep.
On your end, you've got a pretty nice mix as well on your side, but also your wife's side.
Yep.
So let's touch base on one side. You've got Lebanese.
Yes.
On the other side, you've got Italian.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, you are Canadian.
Yep.
So which is the strongest? Which one is the bigger influence in your life? Or which way are you leaning towards? Which side you wanna still explore?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. And, it's interesting being of mixed background, you get to experience so many amazing things about each culture. Being now, I guess, third generation, like my grandparents on either side were the ones that moved here. My parents were both born here, and of course I was born here. But I was raised more on the Italian side. So I definitely got exposed to that lifestyle, that culture, all the amazing things that come with it, especially the food. So I grew up on Italian food, my grandmother's cooking, it was definitely a big part of my life and a big part of my family. But I find it's interesting as time goes on, and I'm sure we'll get into this. So my wife has a different background as well too. I'm more and more open to exploring the other parts of culture and heritage and things that I didn't necessarily experience growing up. Although I do have a Lebanese background, my experience in experiencing that side of the culture is very minimal. So I'm still learning a lot along the way as well too.
I get you. It's like very often there are some parts of our heritage that is still worth exploring, or you want to go that route.
Yes.
But in the same time, like, Italian background is amazing. You like, however, today, because I know that you have both, and I knew that you are still going through the exploration phase of your Lebanese.
Yes.
I made my blind guess today, which is a Lebanese cuisine that we have today. We've got chicken liver,
amazing.
Lebanese style. We've got fried aubergine.
Amazing.
All from Lebanese restaurant. We've got tabbouleh salad. We've got hummus and aubergine version of hummus. Baba ganoush. Obviously, baba ganoush. The perfect setup. Begin.
Well, thank you very much for the wonderful spread. I'll let you start and do the honors. And I'm very fortunate for the background that I have, just for the food alone, right? It is really a blessing, and obviously the things that come along with that. But you talk about two amazing cultures from a food perspective.
Yep.
Like, it's the best of both worlds. You know what I mean? So getting to experience both sides, it's like food is a big part of my life. And of course, I'm very happy that we get to eat on this podcast. This is amazing. So I'm looking forward to diving in. Everything looks fantastic. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Go ahead. Like, as I told you as well, I didn't want to go the easy route.
Yes.
Because that's... Like, I could go with Italian and bring really good stuff. Like, I've got my favorite bakeries that are Italian in a city. Or, obviously, you've got a lot of great Italian cuisine.
Of course.
The only thing is, not many people know about, first of all, Lebanese. Second of all, like, come on. How many people know that you can eat liver? Right?
I know. And it's funny, right? We were talking about this, in the different foods that you get to experience. I think I was talking to you before about how in our family, obviously nutrition is a big thing. We got half a cow and from a farm near us. And I talk about watching my grandparents and how they don't waste anything. They use every single thing. So I was telling you about the cow, and I'm like, I have all these organs that I've never cooked before. I don't know how to cook them, but I'd like to try them, right? Yep. So I'm kind of going through my own food cultural experience as we speak with that. So it's quite interesting. But yeah, awesome. This stuff is really good because you're right. It's stuff that you normally, let's say, wouldn't eat at home. Yep. I'm very blessed. My wife is an absolutely amazing cook. Although she is not Italian, her Italian food is phenomenal. Oh. But of course, she can cook a lot of different things, especially with her diverse background as well too. So this is good because these are things we don't normally eat on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. I like it. She's not a huge fan, so you did well.
Awesome. Good to hear. I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about it.
Yes. For sure. Hopefully nobody hears my loud chewing as we move along here. So.
You're gonna be good. You're gonna be good for sure.
We're getting family style here. People are getting the nitty gritty, the real side of me. So it's good.
That's perfectly fine. This is the part of this show which we wanna get going and maybe make some of the people interested in trying the different cuisine, right? From different sides of the world.
I like it.
Cool. So let's dig in.
Cheers. What are you starting off with?
Hummus.
Okay.
It's intensive, but it's really good.
But see, I have when we're eating these types of food, I like intense flavor, like the garlic, and that's when the stuff is bland. That's what you want to stay away from, right? My wife, I make her laugh because I'm like, I remember as a kid, at Italian house, you have the garden in the background, you pulling out vegetables, you're eating them, and there's so much flavor. Yeah. Now you go to the grocery store and it's like, I get mad because the fruits and the vegetables, they have no taste. And she's like, why don't you eat fruits and vegetables? I'm like, they have no taste, right? Yep. So it's good that this is the authentic way where the flavor shines through, right?
That's true. And baba ganoush, oh, Jesus.
Very good. Delicious. Amazing, man. Well, thank you very much. This is a pleasant surprise. I can definitely handle myself when it comes to the food department. So this is a nice surprise as well, along with some good conversations. This is amazing.
Awesome. So, yeah. The chicken liver is pretty nice. It's a completely different taste if someone didn't ever try the inside parts of the organs.
Yes.
It's completely different type of meat, but it has different flavors.
Yep.
I remember hating it as a kid.
Okay.
At some point, but then the older I got, I appreciate more different pieces, different flavors as well.
It's funny how your taste buds evolve, right? And I remember that too as a kid, my grandmother making certain foods, and there were always certain things that we stay away from as kids. You're like, oh, I don't know about that. But then as you get older, you're like, oh, these things are amazing.
That's right.
And especially too, I can speak on the Italian side especially, there are unique foods that most people would never even think to try or eat, like fried zucchini flowers or quail, artichoke, these types of things. And yeah, it's cool to experience these things in different cultures, right? Not just the standard stuff that you normally see, right? So
that's right.
And this is very good. And I think we talked about this before too. It's also good for you, right? You learn a lot about the nutrition side of things, and obviously, one, not being wasteful, but two, learning that the nutrients that are in these organs and all of these things that the animal provides. So it's a pretty neat experience when you're trying different foods for sure.
On that front, especially on the organ ones, in where I'm from, Poland, we've got the regular things that Polish people eat from the organ side. Yeah. But there are things that I never tried. You can go to reproductive pieces of an animal.
Yep.
It's crazy. You think about it. Back in the day, people, when they had an animal, they ate all of it.
They didn't waste anything.
No.
No.
Skin when was used for clothing or bags or whatever.
Yep.
Right? Or sacks for water.
Yep.
But if they didn't eat part of it, and there was some like bones were fed to animals like dogs and cats and everything else, right?
It's true. It's it's funny actually. So this reminds me of a few things. So when I was younger, my grandparents had a house in Florida, and there was a gentleman who lived down the road who had a dog. And literally, this dog would eat the chicken bones. Everybody would bring this dog chicken bones. Now, I don't know if that's safe or good or not, but to your point, nobody wasted anything. We ate, and then the animals ate. Mm-hmm. And then it's interesting, too, from a food perspective. And I think this is one thing I remember now as I get older and I kind of reminisce as a child, watching like my grandfather, right? Or my grandmother, go through the process of having a garden. I've seen my grandfather get a live chicken, kill the chicken, skin it. And I'm watching this as a kid, right?
Yeah.
So you're seeing the process of food go from start to finish. And you have a different appreciation for
sure
what goes into making the food and how we eat and respecting the animals and all of these things, where I think a lot of times you get lost in that now, because if you go to the grocery store, it's easy. It's just there, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't waste anything. And they become so self-sufficient.
Yeah.
They value where their food comes from. Like there's so much more sentiment that goes to it, right? So it's quite interesting.
Oh yeah, 100%. So on that note, what was your favorite dish growing up on Italian side, obviously, what you have been raised on, Italian cuisine, but also what was the best thing that you ate on Lebanese when you first got to try it, or after, like if you think about it right now, what is the first thing that is coming to your mind that the best Lebanese food is?
You know what? Excuse me. That's a tough one. That's a very tough one, because I love so many different kinds of food.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to pinpoint one thing specifically over another, especially on the Italian side, because I literally like all of it, So I think if I was to go down, thank you very much. I think if I was to go down the road of like what was the one thing that I always remember that kind of stood out to me was probably my grandmother's lasagna.
Oh yeah.
And I saw her, I used to watch her make it and the effort that goes into it. And I literally I'm spoiled, because when I eat that, I can't order that in a restaurant because I haven't experienced anything close to it, right? So that's, I think if I had to pick one, probably that would stand out. But again, that's a very difficult decision because there's too many good options. I could go down the list. On the Lebanese side, obviously everybody's had, shawarma, stuff like that.
That's right.
Now, on that note, not all shawarma is equal, okay?
Obviously.
So that's hard to find good quality shawarma. But I think if there's one that really stands out to me that I used to really like as a kid was, I hope I'm saying this right, was the kibbeh, which is like those like meat balls.
Yep.
They were delicious. I remember those, or even like the kibbenea, which is like the raw meat.
Yep.
Those are the two that really stood out to me, in addition to obviously, stuff like this, tabbouleh, hummus, all of that.
That's right.
But those are the ones that I remember as a kid. I'm like, I really like this kind of stuff, And I think to your point, as you get older, your palate kind of opens up a little bit more.
Yeah.
So now I'm open to eating these kinds of things. Whereas if you put eggplant in front of me as a kid, I would have probably ran the other way.
Yeah,
you know? But I would say those are the ones that stand out.
Spinach was my runaway.
Really,
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
hilarious.
Yeah, I have never been a really big fan of spinach until I actually grow up and appreciate different style of food and different possibilities that it brings, right? So
Yep.
That's nice. So it seems like the lasagna is something that pops to your mind the first thing. Is it because of the emotions that it's bringing, or the experience with your grandmother?
I would say it's a combination. So one, it's the way she makes it, of course. I'm very particular. I know this might sound really weird, but any Italian will understand the tomato sauce. It's not all equal, right? There's just something about her sauce, had a different taste, and just the way they use it, the types of cheese they use, just the way they made it was different. But also too, and I think I alluded to this in our conversation earlier, the reason why food is so important in my life is obviously who doesn't love good food, right?
Yeah.
I like literally we plan trips around where to eat, nothing else, right?
True.
But it's the memories that came with that, because it was always the food that brought the family together, whether it was events, family gatherings, special occasions, holidays. Everybody always centered around the table, and that idea of, okay, the food bringing everyone together.
Yeah.
My core memories as a kid were based around that. Obviously the food was amazing, but it was also the experiences that came with that, right?
Yeah.
And usually any great event that we had as a family was centered around food, right? So I think it's a combination of the two. And then I think also, like you mentioned, you see the effort that goes into making good food, right? And I see my wife do it, my mom, my grandmother, like I've seen all of these great cooks and experienced their great food. And I respect the effort and the work that goes into producing that. All the way from growing the food or raising the animal to putting it on the table. Like I have just a newfound appreciation for just good quality food. And anybody that takes the time and effort to do that for someone, like that is love. You know what I mean? When they take hours and days preparing to try and feed people, nothing says love like that, in my opinion. So that's what sticks out to me.
I 100% agree. It's like every time I'm thinking about, for instance, my grandmother.
Yeah.
This is how she shows her love. It's like I walk through the door. It's like, what you want to eat, my darling?
Hilarious,
it's
right?
Like, and you are taking out another portion, and then after you are fed with the soup, you are fed with the second dish.
Yeah.
Like, which for us is we eat a dinner with one dish. Either it's going to be soup, like really nutritious soup, which is dense and you have all of that, or it's going to be a second course, but we will not do like pre-course, then a first, second, and then dessert. And obviously, with my grandmother, the third thing that comes in is like 3 types of cake.
That's right. There's always, you never go to your grandmother's house without eating food, even if you're there for 10 minutes. I gotta ask, because I'm curious, what was the go-to? Like, what was the one thing from your childhood with your grandmother that's like, this is the one thing that I love? Is there anything that stands out for you as well?
I think there is, the main thing for me is her cake. She's making a special type of dark cake with like chocolate cover with it and sprinkles. Like I always remember that one. And there is like a special type of Polish food as well, where you have it's like potato covered boiled potatoes, and then you have a meat with it, and then it's boiled again. It's it's really heavy dish, but amazing.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Pretty great. My grandma's like dark cake.
Yeah,
it's like I want it. Like even though I'm always saying no, it's enough. I'm gonna have
always
bite
room
or
for
two,
that, right?
And my wife is also laughing every single time that I have a separate stomach for sweets. So
there's always that second stomach, right?
I know, not with my wife. She can get like she likes salty more. Okay. So if she could, she would dig in like a package of chips.
Sure, yeah.
Instead of a sweet stuff. But at the end of the day, if we take something in the restaurant or something, and she's like, no, I'm not gonna take anything, and then she eats half of it from my plate.
I was gonna say that's usually how it goes, right? Because then they see what you're eating, they're like, oh, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna have some of that, right? That's hilarious.
Exactly. On the side of your background,
yes,
what you would like to explore still? What's the areas that are there to go deeper on?
I think what I would like to explore, I find as I get older, I'm getting more and more interested in like the old way of doing things. And one thing I wish I learned, so my grandfather passed away when I was relatively young, but I remember him, he's like old school Italian, right? Used to make the wine, make the prosciutto, like, do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I find myself as I get older more and more intrigued on how they used to do things and wanting to learn how to do it. like exactly like those two things I mentioned, having your own garden, like this kind of stuff, right? Where you end up being kind of more self-sustaining.
Yeah.
So I find from a food and culture perspective, I'm really interested in that, like the old ways of doing things, and obviously becoming more self-sustaining in our own house, healthier, good quality food, whatever it is. There's also the other side of it where I'm very interested in the history, whether that is the history of the countries, you know, different backgrounds, history of our families. Like I want to learn more about the culture and the history of both of those cultures, if that makes sense. And that has to do with, you know, traveling or, you know, your family lineage, whatever it may be. But I find those are the areas that I'm really intrigued with at this very moment, as you kind of grow and you get experience of different things.
For sure. Is it you've been visiting both of the countries, any of them?
So I've been to Italy, and you know, I probably am biased, but I'm sure other people could agree. Pictures don't do it justice, even though the pictures are beautiful. And the moment I was there, I'm like, this just speaks to me, you know? So I cannot wait to go back and experience more of Italy. I have not been to Lebanon. I hear it's amazing, but I haven't traveled too much as of late because I have 3 young kids. So the travels have been on hiatus, and of course you can throw COVID in there as well too. So that made it a little bit more difficult, but I look forward to going to both of those places and experiencing more of those. So I know we're definitely looking forward to visiting those countries, but I have been to Italy, yes.
Awesome. And so on that note, would you be, when going to those countries, would you be just exploring, going to the main places, or would you go to more the root of your family and just trying to follow the lineage and history and all of that, what you mentioned?
I think the amazing thing about those countries, at least what I saw from Italy, is you can kind of get best of both worlds, right? There are the touristy areas, but I almost liked when we kind of got lost and went off the beaten path and got the true, like, authentic feel, right? Not just the touristy places. Because, like, you could tell in Italy, some of those touristy places were not run by Italians. Like, not that I would hesitate supporting these people, but, like, the food was not the same. Like, it wasn't authentic, right? So I think for me, it's probably a combination of the two. Like, obviously, there's touristy areas that you want to see. But obviously, having family there, you want to experience, like, the true authentic culture. And, like, you know, my grandmother's from a village, so it's like a whole different lifestyle.
From a village.
From, like, a village, there's, like, sheep running in the street. Like, it's a whole different world, right? Cool. So I think I would like to get both sides of it and get the true authentic feel, not just be in the touristy areas. However, some of the tourist areas are absolutely beautiful, right? So I think it's a mix of both.
Okay, for sure. And if I ask you to tell me something about each of the cultures,
okay,
what would be the first thing that you're gonna show me as a completely fresh person who doesn't know anything about any of them?
Well, I think you've answered that question. It's the food, right? It's like, what a great way to get exposed to culture. What a great way to kind of open your mind to those experiences of, like, what it is like. So I think I would start with the food, you know? And then I think in addition to that, you know, obviously it depends if you're actually over there. But one of the things that was amazing in Italy was just walking the streets and seeing the architecture and the buildings and the history. And I think for me too, I really enjoyed that. Like, I like that kind of stuff. So just walking around and experiencing that, and just visually, like, it's very visually appealing and amazing. So I think those would be the areas that I would start. But definitely food, I think, is the go-to. Like, food brings people together. Look at us. We're having a conversation over food.
That's right.
To me, it's such a focal point in my life. So I think I would start there.
Well, yeah, especially as a Italian or European background, that's where it starts.
Yeah,
that's where it finishes.
It's true, right? Well, you know that too with your background. Like, we grew up like this, right? Like,
exactly.
There was so much value and importance put into the meal, right? So yeah, it's you can relate for sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. On the note of heritage. Is there any way specific to you yourself that you embrace your heritage?
That's a good question. How do I embrace my heritage? Well, I think it's interesting. So I find myself embracing it more and more now that I have kids. So my wife, we were talking about this. She has a pretty diverse background. Her father's from Turkey. They're Assyrian. Her mom is a Polish Jew. So we literally have such a vibrant mix of culture. And I found now that having 3 young kids, they're very curious and they want to learn about these things. Yeah. So we're very open from that perspective. We want to teach them about the different cultures. So I feel like it's a learning experience for them, but it's also a learning experience for us because we're teaching them all the different values and things that we've picked up from each culture, right?
That's right.
So I find having kids has really kind of not forced us, but made us kind of go back into appreciating the heritage and the culture and making it a part of our life. So that way our kids have that as well too. So I feel like since I've had kids, that's really kind of accelerated that part of our life.
Okay. So it sounds like the main turning point, or the point where you kind of laser focused on the heritage, was the having your kids and trying to pass it on to them as well, the part of.
Yeah, well, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think you're right. I think, when you're young, right, you're in your early 20s, like, of course we grew up this way, but I think in a way you almost take it for granted, right? We don't necessarily appreciate it as much as we should.
I agree.
And I find as time is going on and as I'm evolving and growing as an individual and raising 3 humans, you tend to appreciate those moments more and more. And then you start to think back, okay, what were my core memories and what core memories do I want to leave for my children, right? So yeah, I think there was a lot of times when you're young, you take those moments for granted. So we have an opportunity as parents to now kind of come full circle, right? And have the garden and go through that experience. So yeah, kids definitely made a big difference when it comes to that perspective, for sure.
Okay, awesome. And so when you are saying you have been looking into your life and those moments, what comes to mind?
A lot of things come to mind. You know what? I would say it's a lot of things. Being a business owner, there's different layers, right? Yeah. Business, family, spirituality, all of these different things. And I find as I get older, there are moments and things that happen in your life that force you to want to grow. At least for me, they did. Like, for example, having children. And when you go through that experience, it kind of makes you reflect on, the subconscious thoughts and patterns that were created when you were a child, right?
For sure.
So you start going through everything, right? Whether it's, values and subconscious patterns around money or around parenting or what your parents did, right?
That's right.
So it's kind of like all of those things that force you to kind of reflect and think about how you would like to do things differently as you move forward. So yeah, it's kind of like a mixed bag when it comes to that. I don't think there's one thing that stands out, but I think if you're looking at it from a perspective of trying to evolve and grow and just be a better individual on all different levels, it's important to start from within and look at those experiences and then kind of build out from that.
Oh yeah, this is like you just open a completely different, like separate kind of worms. It's
True.
Like the experiences with our families and what we went through as children made us to the certain degree who we are, plus our own challenges and what we went through in our own adulthood.
Yep.
But yeah, there are a lot of those patterns that stay, and like if you go deep into that level, there are traumatic experience, some of them
100%.
and like if you look from a perspective of how you have been raised, like very often you don't feel that there was a traumatic event in your life, but at the end of the day is how you what is the perspective, right?
Yes.
We are not talking about perspective you as an adult who is grown, who went through it and built on top of that, or sometimes suppressed it.
Yes.
We are talking more about the situation of that 3-year-old, 5-year-old who is getting it subconsciously, who doesn't know what's going on, but feels it, right? So on that level.
Very good point. It's, it's interesting, right? And you're right. This opens up a whole other can of worms. You could have a whole conversation just based on that. But you're right. I don't look back at my childhood as being, let's say, a bad childhood. I grew up in a very, middle class, like what you would classify, I guess, a normal family. But it is interesting, you know, when you look back of the subconscious thoughts and patterns and things that you have now, or those experiences that you didn't think were traumatic but that were as a child, and you see how much that affects you, not only in, you know, with your family, business, life, your mindset, all of these things, right? So it is a pretty interesting experience when you start opening up that can of worms. And I kind of like use the analogy of an onion, right? You're peeling back the layers of the onion because you're always evolving and growing. But I think it's so important to do because, you know, when you're trying to achieve a certain level of success or an overall lifestyle, and that's not just financially, that's, you know, being strong mentally, physically, all of these things, you kind of have to break yourself down and then build yourself back up in a lot of ways, right?
That's true. It's a never-ending process.
Correct.
And it's like very often we as humans we tend to go back to that comfort level always, and it's always really hard to break the pattern, but in the same time, sometimes you need to go really deep to discover what's in it there.
Well, it's because it's uncomfortable, right? You look at, you know, business itself, right? It's not easy and it's uncomfortable, right? It's who can kind of withstand and push through that feeling of feeling uncomfortable, because you have those moments. And it's the same thing when you're looking at, you know, what you experience as a child. Yeah, there's going to be uncomfortable moments and things that don't feel good, but the only way to feel good is to work through them, right? Otherwise they are suppressed and you don't really grow, you know? So it is an interesting experience. I definitely don't think, I think for myself, I've just started to scratch the surface, and I always kind of say, you know, you're evolving until you die, and you could argue that you're still evolving after that, but that's again a whole nother conversation. But, you know, it's really one of those experiences. Once you are self-aware and you start opening that door, you learn a lot about yourself along the way, for sure.
I'm with you on that for sure. I've got the version of what you just said. For me, it's learning. As long as you are learning, you're like, there is a quote, you start dying when you stop learning.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
It's exactly the same thing, just about evolving, right? So it's the same thing. On that note, since we are here with the business evolving, the challenging yourself and going through all the emotions of starting something or going outside of the comfort zone, what does success mean to you?
You know what? Success means a lot of things. And again, you know, I know I probably bring it up a lot because it's important. Your idea of success does evolve and change as well, especially when you have kids. It is really a life-changing experience from there. And of course, there are the material things, right? And I have no shame in saying that. I mean, I do believe, you know, we have weird, you talk about subconscious patterns and thoughts. People have weird emotional relationships with money, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's a big part in our business. You know, we're working with clients. It's that emotional relation and psychological relationship with money, right? And working and, you know, knocking down those barriers.
That's right.
But I think success means a lot of things. I think obviously, you know, there's the you know, material things, the big house, the cars, like who doesn't want that, right? But for me, it goes even deeper, right? When I think about, let's say, having a big house, it's to have the family and the cousins and everybody in a place that they could come and experience and enjoy together. Cars, I grew up around cars since I was a little boy. You know, me and my dad, we actually restore old muscle cars. So like I am a gearhead in my blood, in my veins. So for me, that is always something I've been passionate about. But then I think also too, you know, you look at flexibility, freedom, doing what you want when you want. You know, we talk a lot about this. Those are big things for me, and not just changing my life, but changing the lives of people around me as well. That to me is success. When you have that type of impact, where whether it's your clients or maybe it's your family directly, right? The people that supported me in the beginning when I needed help the most. If I can not just change my family's life financially, but also their life, to me, that's really what I envision as success, because you're having that much greater impact. So
it's like giving back, kind of, for returning the favor in a way.
Yeah, like I think a lot of times with success, and you know, there's flow involved with that, right? It's a give and take, right? You don't just want to give, you got to be able to give as well too. And again, you know, I think that's when really success to me is when you can change or impact somebody's life in a positive way. That's a tremendous feeling, right? Whatever that may be, right?
For sure.
So I know for me, you know, that's probably my goals in a nutshell, but we could go deeper on that if you like, but you know, it's definitely one of those things when I look at success, it's probably a multi-layer thing from that perspective.
Okay. Awesome. And so since we are on the note of success and going deeper, I'm going to ask you shortly about the psychological connection that you mentioned. But before that, can you tell me what you think about what does it mean to be a maverick?
I think it's kind of in line with almost what we just touched on, right? It's forging your own path and doing things the unconventional way. And it's funny, I don't know where I got this from, but even from a young age, I never really thought the status quo was the right for me. You know, the traditional way of, okay, I'm going to go to school and then go to university and get a job. It just never, I was never wired that way, and it never sat right with me. And I was always trying to strive to find, okay, where's my path, right? What does it look like for me? I always had this entrepreneurial bug, but I never knew what business to do or where to apply it, right? And I tried different things like most entrepreneurs, some success, some failures, a lot of failures along the way. But yeah, I think a maverick is really just forging your own path, believing in your vision, and having a clear vision of what success looks like to you, because it really is different. And we do this with clients as well. Once you have a clear vision of what that looks like, and that comes with time, you can then work backwards and say, okay, this is the right avenue to get me there. So yeah, I think, you know, I've never liked being confined. I'm not a 9-to-5 guy. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
So being a maverick is doing what you want, when you want, forging your own path, and being finding your true purpose, I guess you could say.
Okay. That's amazing definition. Definitely. And on that note, how are you different? What is about you that you feel that you do different way from people that you know?
Sure.
The way you do business, the way you go about professional and personal life, and like, what is the thing that comes to mind, or a couple things?
Oh, that's a good one. There's a lot of layers, I think, to that. I think one, it's finding your authentic self.
Let's peel that onion.
Let's peel the onion, right? I think it's one, finding your authentic self, you know, and that again looks different for everybody. But when I think about, you know, these types of things and what makes me different, you know, you look at, let's say, from a business perspective, right? If there's other financial companies, financial services companies, we're all offering a similar service, right?
That's right.
What really makes you different? You could sit here and say, well, my product is this. Okay, for the most part, it's all the same. Okay, let's be honest. Sure, there are some outliers. However, I think it really comes down to the individuals. And there's things that you can't fake. It's one, your being authentic, right? Being able to build trust, transparency, and the way you communicate. I think that's so important. So I know that for me, I really strive to do that with people, especially when I meet new people, is making them feel comfortable and building trust, whether that's business or personal, right?
I can attest to that. Like, that's why we are sitting here today, because our first meeting was so straightforward. Like, I rub people the wrong way as a maverick myself, and I'm also European.
Yep.
And I'm also like a lot of people would say Eastern. I say Middle Europe, yeah, I am really straightforward. I can go at it straight away. I don't like bullshit. Yep. I don't like people, two-faced people, and I will tell that to the person to their face.
Yeah.
But I rubbed a lot of people wrong way doing that. So
yeah,
definitely can attest to you. Like, after that first meeting, we still got that connection, and
yes,
it's awesome.
I 100% agree, man. You and I hit it off from the get-go, and I find the transparency refreshing, because as you and I both know, it's very few and far between. And as you get older and as you start to do different things, you realize how important your time is, and who you want to associate with is very important.
That's right.
Obviously, why we're having this conversation right here.
Sure.
And I think too, I think one of the things that has made me different is my experience from the standpoint of I didn't take the traditional way of go to university, get a job, and then go right into finance. Like my route was very unconventional, but I use that to my advantage because when I was young, I learned how to deal with people. And that is something that I developed from a very young age. And that to me is a big part of my business. It's anybody can learn the technical side, but can you deal with people and be authentic and have conversations and make them feel comfortable? And so my route was a little bit more unconventional from that standpoint. And then I think also too, there's grit that gets made along the way when you take the entrepreneurial route.
Yep.
I remember being in high school and the guidance counselor was like, if you go to university, you're smart. If you go to college, so, and if you don't go to either, you're stupid. Well, I didn't go to university. I got accepted to go to university. I went there for one day. I went on campus to get my residence and I was like, this is not for me. And I went and forged my own path. And there's a lot of experiences along the way that most people would not understand unless they went through it themselves.
Yeah.
And for me, that's another value add, which makes us different and my business different is I work with a lot of business owners and I understand the trials and tribulations that they go through because I've been through it and I've seen it firsthand, right? I'm not just looking at it from a financial lens, I'm looking at it from a business lens, right? And I think that gives me an advantage because then I'm looking at it from a full circle. So that way when we're doing planning, offering advice, we're looking outside of just our scope of what we do. We also bring other people to the table. And I think in addition to that, when we talk about, finding your purpose and forging your own path, for me, it's a lot of different things. It's not being happy with the status quo, whether it's the education system, the business, jobs, all of these things. Like I told you, my kids are homeschooled. Like I have certain views on certain things. And I think it's just not being afraid to kind of step into those, those rooms or those areas because they are foreign for a lot of people, They are. The homeschooling one is a perfect example. A lot of times when you tell people that you're homeschooling their, kids, you're homeschooling your kids, they look at you sideways. But then you get into this whole other community and it allows you to grow. So I think it's just not being afraid to step into the unknown and not being afraid to step out of the status quo. We talk about being a maverick. Well, that's really what it is. A lot of people talk about doing it, but how many people are actually willing to do it?
That's right. The path is, a lot of people are saying the path is hard and you are alone most of the time. Majority of the time, a lot of people, family, friends will not understand what you're doing. Why are you doing it? And why aren't you taking the conventional route? I know from my own experience. My mother for many years couldn't believe even like me having successful construction company back in Norway. Like, why are you doing it? Like, she's more happy with me having a job right now. She doesn't know about my side business right now. And she's more happy me being employed somewhere else at the moment, even though this is not the first choice for me. Right? So it's at many situations is you need to decide for yourself. You need to know what's the path for you. Even though like you mentioned the education. Part of my education that I did for myself was to make my parents happy. Yeah, I got some from it. Would I do it again? No, definitely will not.
But how would you know that, right? Unless you look back now and it's interesting, right? When I look back at those experiences, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of trial and error. Yeah, but those are things you learn along the way that you can now apply moving forward, right?
That's right.
And I think in a lot of cases, like, again, the education system is a whole different animal that we could talk about as well too. But we are kind of taught that this is like what you're supposed to do. But then you see people that go through it. And yes, there are outliers, people who have successful careers. But I've seen so many people, my parents included, like they work their entire life. Right. And it's, they've done okay, but it's like they're not affluent or wealthy in any way, and I'm like, well, was that worth it?
True.
So it's like there's so many of those experiences that we didn't know because our parents thought, hey, this was the best thing for our kids.
That's right.
But I think that is changing, right? And I think we have to be open to change. And I think some people are still too afraid to accept that, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, 100%. And the picture is changing because we've got access to different information right now.
Yes.
That our parents did not.
Yep.
We on the tip of our finger, we've got one of the strongest computers ever, which has access to the biggest database,
Yes.
which is internet. You can literally check the hardest things in a matter of seconds.
Yep.
And if you've got that base of thinking for yourself, you can make your opinions way easier than you would do as I'm thinking about my own parents. Like when they were young, there was some information public.
Yeah.
There was opinion of the family, but there wasn't like they couldn't access the outside unless they had someone in their life who was wacky, who had the completely opposite to ideas to everyone.
Yes.
But in the same time, if you're living you've got that societal pressure.
Yeah.
So you will follow either your family's point of view or societal one or political climate. That's another big story.
Well, and you bring up a good point. You know, when you look at why it's difficult sometimes to be the contrarian is because you look at all of the outside pressure and what people are telling you, and you start to feel, oh, hey, am I crazy or am I actually on the right path, right? But I always look at it from a perspective, whether it's business or life, you know, sticking to your values, what you believe in, understanding that you can have your own opinion, but then also too from a business perspective, right? I always use this example. Is the person giving you the advice someone who has created what you want? And a lot of times people are getting the wrong advice from the wrong people, you know? So yeah, it's not easy. And especially when you have, you know, societal pressure from parents, and you're right, it's now been heightened with COVID and politics and all of that stuff. But that's why these conversations are important. And that's why surrounding yourself with like-minded people are important, because then you realize there's a whole other avenue that you can explore that you align with, right?
That's right.
And I find as I get older, I've always had a small circle, but you always find yourself more drawn to like-minded individuals.
Refining it?
You refine it, 100%. And you have to, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important. I think that's how you have a better quality of life, in my opinion.
Or that's like the people that we surround ourselves with. That is very often a lot of people, a lot of books, a lot of you can call them gurus, you can call them coaches, or whatever, people who have the level of success that you might be looking up to.
Yep.
They are often saying that the five people that you surround yourself with is basically a sum of where you are going or where you are staying. But also on the other hand, I've noticed there are some people who would say you need to have that 5 people that gonna be in your closest circle, that gonna push you forward.
Yeah.
But they might be at the same level that you are. But you need 5 people who are gonna be where you want to go, and you need 5 people who are just below your level, so you can pull them up as you go.
And do you not find over time, and I'm curious to hear your feedback on this, but also it evolves, right? You'll notice when you look back on life and you're like, oh, this person was only in my life for a few years and then kind of just faded away, or you drift apart. And you're right, it is that ecosystem. And I've even seen it in my business where there's the people that come into your life at different points to impact you in certain ways, positive or negative. And the negative are usually lessons.
Of course.
But then also too, you bring up a good point, bringing those other people up behind you. That's an amazing thing to then be able to do, because you remember what it was like to be in their scenario, and you're like, okay, now I can offer advice and help those people too. Like, it's such a great ecosystem from that perspective. And I think if you surround yourself with the right mix, it's a great opportunity to give and take and support each other in a lot of different ways, for sure.
It is, and it builds that part of the tribe that we gonna be talking about. But I would I want to emphasize as well that it's that third group of people who you are trying to pull up with you or help them out is the hardest to deal with. because they need to want to get on the wagon with you, and
Yes.
they want to be helped, right? I found myself very often like, the best example is the friends I lost when I wanted to employ all my friends in my successful business in Norway. I wanted to give job to everybody. I don't have contact with any of them right now because
It's wild.
yeah, because suddenly for both sides, like I became an entrepreneur and business owner, and I needed to treat them as my employees to a certain degree, and they couldn't grasp that.
It's such a fine line, don't you find, right? Because you're right. When you're running a business, you have to treat it like a business.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want to give people you care about an opportunity. And it's amazing how many people let those opportunities pass them by when the opportunity is right there.
Yeah.
And that's why it is a give and take, you know. And it's funny, I'll use kids again as an experience, right? It's got to be both ways. You got to give them opportunity, but they got to want it, right?
That's right.
And it's the same thing with running a business. You can't hold their hand every step of the way. You can guide them, but they got to want it just as much as you want to be able to help them.
Yep.
And anybody who is motivated, like I remember when I started in my business and I had 0 clients, I started from scratch. The first thing I did was I found the most successful advisors in the office, and I'm like, I want to talk to these people, right?
That's right.
And I would, I'm now getting people that are doing that to me. And I love that because it's like, if I can give someone some advice that can help them accelerate their career,
Yeah.
I would love to do that. But you see those intangibles that not everybody has.
That's right.
That make the world of difference, right? So yeah, it's interesting, when you look at that from different experiences, and some people grasp at the opportunities, some people just let it pass them by, right? And for whatever reason, that's their life path. But yeah, it's quite interesting.
It goes a long way, like while you're going or setting yourself a new goals, going after another and another,
Yeah.
and you want to grow, and you've got that circle who is growing, or the circle of friends that you are aspiring to get into,
Yep.
right? It gives you different perspective as well. First of all, on life, on business, on everything, but like, it is such a blessing when you see someone coming back to you asking for help, for advice, or even like getting the simplest call, which is referral, coming your way. It's like, shit, I don't remember the person that I spoke with, what I did. I did something right. That they referred me to someone else, right?
It is literally, and I actually tell clients this. If someone sends a referral, it is probably one of the biggest compliments you can give someone. And I'll tell you why, especially in our business, when you're dealing with money, you're dealing with insurance,
right.
You're dealing with personal matters. We are in such a relationship-based business that if, you work so hard to build that trust and make clients feel comfortable, that when they send someone that they care about to you, I like gush over them, because I'm like, I'm very grateful. Regardless of what level I'm at, I will always be grateful of that, because one, I know how difficult it was in the beginning when I had no clients, but also two, that really just reaffirms that we're doing the right things and doing a good job, and clients appreciate that, which is huge, because you want to build that long-term relationship and that ecosystem. So you're right. And what I find too, what happens is, as you start to go through these experiences, you also see the value of giving referrals as well.
That's right.
You and I talked about this, where I'm like, okay, who can I introduce you to get on the podcast? And like, who do you want to talk to? And it's like, I get a lot of satisfaction of giving referrals as well too, because I know the impact that it has.
That's right.
And to me, it's an amazing feeling, even from that perspective as well.
On that note, everyone who needs money advice or financial planning, you need to reach Arman and his service. He definitely gonna take care of you properly.
You are too kind, man. I appreciate the plug. Thank you.
We can definitely at some point dive into what we are doing together as well.
Sure.
It's a way that people like. The funny thing is, I have always known about because what we are working together with is a way of building wealth through life insurance.
Yep.
And a lot of people are thinking about life insurance as life insurance, insuring your life.
Yes.
And we are looking at it as as a tool to grow your wealth. Basically move your money through another system that's gonna just accumulate it faster, protect it way better, and just excel the money working for you in multiple ways, much better, much faster.
So this is one great example, and obviously we're working on some stuff around that. So I'm happy you brought it up. But it's interesting, when we look at financial planning, and this always bothered me when I got in the career, it was like you'd see every year RSP season and people pushing RSPs and pushing these products. And I'm like, this goes back to the contrarian way of doing things. That just because everybody's doing it doesn't mean it's right for everybody.
That's right.
And insurance is a good example for that. One, it's not for everybody, right? But in certain circumstances, when you're able to show people the opportunities that are available and how it's used as a vehicle and as a tool, their eyes start to light up because they're like, oh, I never knew about this. And a lot of the reasons why that is because it was always typically geared towards ultra high net worth families that were using it. Like if you start to do some research, the wealthiest families in Canada, US, they're the ones that are using these strategies, right?
That's true.
These strategies never really trickle down to, normal people, I guess you could say, right?
Yep.
So once you're able to educate them and inform them and where the situation is right and it makes sense, it is a tremendous opportunity that people can take advantage of. But it's a lot of that comes in the process, right? True. That's where we come into play, educating them, but also understanding where the fit is. Is it a right fit? You and I had a lot of conversations when we were doing your planning. It's like, you got to make sure that you're not just, putting a product in for the sake of it. Like there's a purpose behind it. Oh, yes. Right?
For sure.
And even for us too, when we're doing financial planning, we're looking at things holistically. So we're not just looking at insurance. We're looking at the investments. We're looking at everything. Taxes, tax efficiency, building wealth, all of this different stuff. So when you're factoring all of that in, it opens your mind to what vehicles and opportunities are there. But it's also a little bit more outside the box thinking, which I think is really important because to the point I just mentioned before, a lot of this, the standard things that people have been using maybe are not always the best in their scenarios. So insurance is a fantastic tool when it's used properly, for sure.
And on that note, insurance is a great tool, is one of the tools.
Yes.
And we spoke about it a couple times. It's like there's insurance, the RSPs, TFSAs, all of that is beautiful and nice and cool until government decides to cut it off, right?
Yes.
And then what? Right? And if I like to, every time there's a big problem in the world, everyone who I speak with, it's like there's always something. If you want to understand the issue, where it's coming from, just follow the money. Just connect the dots, go at it, and then you're gonna see that majority of decisions in this world are made by 5 companies.
Yep.
Or if you go deeper, 2. Or so
it's true.
And people are saying big heads, like 8 big heads who are ruling the whole world.
Yeah.
Are they? I don't know. I know there are big corporations that are dealing with, they have their fingers in every single pot.
Yeah.
And so that's how our life looks like. So for me, myself personally, that's why we have those conversations about money as well, is because I want to be independent. I want to use the vehicles that have been used by biggest families that I never knew before. The best example is after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, when I was, I don't know, I was just coming to my 20s or just on the verge of that. I got thunderstruck, like the house is not the investment. Holy crap. It is an investment when it brings you cash flow and not when you live in it, because it's your expense and your liability. And a lot of people are like, no, because it's appreciating in value, I can depreciate whatever and stuff like that. Like, you can, but this is wishing. You are wishing for the market to go up. Of course, looking at especially Toronto market and Canadian market, everything is going up, but at the same time, it in financial terms, this is not an asset. It is a liability.
And I'm happy you bring that up because it basically opens up your eyes to the non-status quo way of doing things. Because what have people been taught, our generation, right? You got to own a house. You got to own a house. And I see people putting every last dollar they have into a house they can afford, right?
True.
So what quality of life do you have from that perspective, right? And then you forget about the property tax and the land transfer tax and the interest you pay and, you know,
Garbage disposal.
maintenance, all of this stuff, right? So yeah, it is a different perspective that, yeah, you get a lot of pushback on depending on who you talk to. But it also comes down to the individual, right? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to build wealth? I know a lot of business owners, guys like you and I, we're trying to build wealth, right? We're trying to have a larger impact. Some people, all they want to do is have their house, have a car, a dog, family, and that's it, right?
That's
so it depends on the individual. Same thing with the insurance strategies, right? Or some of the other wealth strategies that we implement. It all comes down to what are we trying to accomplish, right? But yeah, I think when you come in with that open-minded perspective, you don't know what you don't know, and you learn different ways of looking at things, right?
That's right.
And then you start to question the traditional ways of doing things. Like, well, why were they pushing everybody to get their house? Well, that's how the banks made money, right? Why do they want RSPs? That's how the bank makes money, right? All of these different things. So it's always nice having a different lens or a different perspective, because then it opens your eyes and you learn different things along the way. For example, just like what you said, right? Owning a home doesn't always make sense, right? There are sometimes better ways of doing it, for sure.
And coming back to the point where we were talking about following the money. If you follow the money on RRSP, okay, banks are making money, and who is pushing banks to make more money? Politicians. And if you in 2023 believe that politicians do not have their pockets filled by corporations, you need to go and start learning a little bit, or reading for yourself, because that's the reality. If you believe in what politicians are doing, don't get me wrong, there are unicorns. There are those ones who are trying, especially before elections. They're gonna show you that how hard they are trying. Then the reality hits.
It's a dangerous, slippery slope when you start talking about politics, but I have to agree. I think there's definitely been an abuse of power. You also see where the money is going and an abuse of that as well, too. And it's hard to think that we're getting our value for service, you know? I think there's definitely been an overreach in a lot of different ways, and I think that's being polite.
That's right.
And you know, I think I look at life from a perspective, you know, when we talk about being a maverick, a contrarian, you want to be less reliant on the government. You want to be not reliant on the government at all. If anything, you want the government not to stick their nose in your business. Whereas I think sometimes people are too reliant on the government, right? Government program, government this, government subsidy. Like, we got to learn to be more, you know, self-sustaining, I guess.
A lot of people are still thinking about retirement, the government going to provide. Like, if you believe in that, I'm happy for you, but at the end of the day, just look into different countries and what government have done, and basically cut in half, taken all of them, all the retirements. Like, just looking at Europe, the oldest continent, as they call it, like, there have been a lot of wishy-washy and black stuff going behind the scenes, and at the end of the day, what can you do? Like, when the country is doing that for their own citizens, what can you do?
You know what? You're 100% right. And it's interesting. I was listening to this documentary, and I hope I'm paraphrasing this correctly, but he basically gave the example of our society thinks from the past till now, we've done everything better over time. We've just improved. But he argued that, if anything, society is cyclical, right? You see the rise and the downfall of societies.
That's right.
And I tend to agree with that, because when you look at the decisions that are being made and you look at how these countries are run and the direction they are going in, history does repeat itself, right? And I don't think it's necessarily trending in the right direction, which is why, especially when you're talking about finances and money, you hope that you open your eyes to other opportunities that are there that you can take advantage of, because you are 100% correct. The government can make a change at any point that can drastically impact your financial scenario if you are not prepared, right?
That's right.
And there's a few things that I find keep coming up in conversations with a lot of our business owner clients. They want solutions that are flexible, liquidity, tax efficient, give them growth. So, you start to explore these different avenues. But yeah, a lot of times history does repeat itself. You are 100% correct.
For sure. If you look at the best example of it is recent hikes on interest rates, right? Why is it happening? First of all, because all the lockdowns and everything that made our market stretch, but printing of the money. They need to get the money from somewhere now if they print so much, right?
They're literally just, it's kind of comical to watch because they're literally just throwing money at every problem and solving absolutely nothing. So it's going to be interesting to see what direction things go, and especially in North America. And you look at Western culture, you look at, the financial decisions from these governments and the direction that it's going from that perspective. And I think the writing is kind of on the wall. If you don't have your head in the sand, I think you can kind of tell it's not going to be pretty, right? And nobody can predict obviously the future, but yeah, it's hard to argue that I don't see us moving in the right direction, at least for the foreseeable future. So it'll be interesting, but I think also too from that perspective, being contrarians, being Mavericks, we then look at that, okay, where does the opportunity lie, right? We're thinking outside the box. Where can we take advantage of opportunity, right? So it's a mix of both.
It is definitely, and it's being the Maverick and having that open mind, and I think being a business owner gives you that edge of thinking outside of the box because you have to, because that's the way you go about starting a business. Even you need to sit down and see, okay, what's lacking? What can I provide? What is my skill set? What are things that I'm good at? What I'm not? Do I want to go the hard route and improve on something, learn as I go, and still provide that service? Or do I want to kind of provide the service based on experiences that I already have? And it's still, for me, myself, especially the financial part, is all those things connected. I look at my finances through that lens. So I'm going to look at making my money work multiple times before I can get it and use it at the end of the day. So I don't want just income coming to my pocket. I want credit cards, and I'm going to utilize that to the max. I'm going to keep on growing my credit score so I can use that, and then use that credit to build a business credit score as well, and build on top of that. That's one level. Then we've got life insurance, which is another vehicle which can move the money through another thing that's going to build and have that accumulative growth. But then you've got the companies. If you are a business owner, you can deduct a lot of taxes, and there's the tax strategies where you want to try to make sure that you pay the little, because at the end of the day, as we said, the tax dollars are not efficiently used. And why would you be a sponsor of the government or the country if those resources are not correctly used?
I 100% agree. And I think the one thing that really gets overlooked, and you can relate to this, is look at how hard it is to build a business from scratch, right? And the moment you start to achieve success, they want to punish people that have had success. And it's so backwards because you know what? One, how difficult it is to build a business, right? And how many roadblocks you face, especially here in Canada. There's also the element of the greater impact, right? Business provides service which supports the community, which helps people. They hire individuals. There's so many layers that businesses, give back, right? So yeah, I think to your point, when you're looking at it from a financial perspective, you want to take every advantage as possible that you can within your, reason of being in Canada. To try to minimize how much goes to the government and maximize how much goes to you and your family, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that whatsoever. Again, there's a lot of different strategies. And also too, to your point, having your money work for you. It's so important, right? It is so important to make sure that you have these vehicles that are generating cash flow, wealth, all of these different things. it just alleviates a lot of pressure too from a business owner standpoint, right? I always use the analogy, you're not always chasing it, right? You have your money working for you, right? So, and again, this looks different for everybody. There are people that have big dreams, big aspirations, guys like you and I. And then there are people that are okay just living a simple life. I think once you figure out what that looks like for you, then you start to narrow down, okay, which vehicles make the most sense and what type of things do we need to be doing to get to that point. But yeah, I think, at the end of the day, you got to be exploring as many opportunities as you can, yes. and surrounding yourself with the right people that are exposing you to these opportunities, for sure.
And on that note, it's always trying, first of all, just getting back to what you said, it's not about working for the money, it's about money working for you.
Yes. And
making it work really hard, because you are working really hard for your money. So why not turn the wheels around and get the money working for you? And to your point where you said living a simple life, it's way easier to live a simple life when you have a big cushion sitting on your bank account, your insurance policy, whatever else toolbox you want to use for that money, or multiple, than living a simple life where you're struggling to get the carrot on your plate.
100%, and as we both know in business, right, there's ebbs and flows. Right? So it's so important to have that money working for you efficiently, because you're right, it gives you that peace of mind, that quality of life that you're looking for, and it kind of helps smooth out those ebbs and flows in business. Because look at COVID, right? Pandemic hits, everybody's business is closed. You never know which event is going to blindside you, or what upticks business or what downticks business, right? So, once you start getting to that point where you have money, you started making money, you got to take advantage of every opportunity that you can, for sure.
Would you say that it is, from your perspective as advisor, it is wise to look to, first of all, to know how the money works, then educating yourself before you're going to reach out to a person like yourself, so you know what you are dealing with, or finding a person like yourself who's going to tell you, okay, this is what we are up against. This is what you have to prepare yourself to. This is what you have to learn, and then come back to me. We're going to figure it out together.
So I would say I get clients from all levels, right? I think at the end of the day, one thing I always try to focus on is making them understand, okay, what are you good at, right? Let's say it's running your business, right? We're there to complement that, right? Yeah, we want you to understand the solutions that we eventually will recommend, but we're part of your, I guess, team, right? That's when you're building out these options. And I always try to make complicated things as simple as possible, because simplicity leads to understanding, leads to decision.
Less is more.
Less is more, especially in our business, because you can get bombarded and overwhelmed with terminology and different things that are available to you, right?
For sure.
Now, of course, once we educate clients on the solutions that we recommend, it opens up a whole nother conversation. So yeah, if clients come to us like, you were pretty well informed when we started our conversations, yeah, that helps, of course, because then you're kind of like skipping a few steps and you can dive into the nitty gritty. But I think it really is a case by case. Some people don't have the time, right? They're too busy running their business, family, whatever it is. Our goal is to make it easy for them, right?
That's right.
Easy, seamless process, make them understand in a simple, efficient way. So, I think at the end of the day, you just have to know whether you're someone who is willing to take that on yourself, or someone who is like, you know what, I could use the support of a professional to kind of expedite this and make sure I don't make any mistakes.
And then you call Armand.
Hopefully. We're definitely happy to have those conversations, and sometimes it's, finding the right fit. And that's one thing, when you talk about one of your previous questions about what makes you different, right? And I tell people all the time, when you're interviewing an advisor, interview a few of us, right? Myself, a few other people. And then from there, you can say, okay, I like this guy, I want to work with him. Or, hey, I want to go work with someone else. I think that's so important, finding somebody that you're aligned with.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you and I started having those conversations, we were aligned from the get-go.
That's right.
But that is a huge part of it, because I know in our business, our goal is to build that long-term relationship.
Yeah, but we've on that note, we've been aligned to all the way, but I still did my due diligence and I still talk to other people.
As you should. And I think if you remember, I encourage you to do that,
That's
right? Because I think it's so important at the end of the day when you're making financial decisions, it's not one person. Like, we're only one piece in the wheel, right? You're going to talk to accountants, lawyers, and everybody's going to have different perspectives. And at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for you. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure you sleep well at night.
For sure.
And also, too, we want to make sure we don't miss anything, right?
That's right.
Nobody is perfect. We want to be as thorough as possible. So yeah, I always encourage that, because then it just opens up dialogue. It opens up conversation. And at the end of the day, who benefits? The client, right?
That's right. That's right. Just talking about, for instance, the insurance as a vehicle.
Sure.
It's, again, if I wasn't, and at any point in time, like looking back through my history, I had the policy back in Poland at some point, which I closed down after some years and pulled out the money because I needed it.
Yes. Which,
looking back from the perspective, I know it was the wrong thing to do, obviously, but I learn on my mistake right now. And in the same time, I learned that this is another way, another path to use the money working for you, as we spoke earlier. And it can be really hard to go through all the details and try to understand everything, how it works. Can be completely overwhelming, like everything. But you can take your time, and you are the best example of it. Like, I run you back and forth all the way, like multiple times, and we were going back and forth, tweaking this and that, talking about it. I had my questions and more questions and more questions and more questions, and until I got to the point where I understood, I was comfortable with it, and I knew that this is the right way, and this is the right policy, this is the right tool to use. And that's how we gonna roll. That's how I decided to roll with it, right?
Well, and to your point, it really is a collaborative process, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that when you put a solution in place, you sleep well at night, you feel good about it. So I welcomed a lot of your questions and our conversations, because again, it's getting you to the point where you feel comfortable, right? Some clients it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, right? But that's our due diligence as advisors to take the client through that process. And that's why there is no cookie cutter financial plan or cookie cutter insurance solution or investment solution. Like, what we did for you might look different for the next individual, right?
That's right.
Every scenario is very unique depending on what we're trying to accomplish. And of course, we see a mixed bag from, ultra high net worth to simple stuff, right? But there's a lot of things along the way that are really important. I believe in taking our time and doing the right work and giving good advice. At the end of the day, it just makes for a much better experience, not only for us, but for the client as well.
Yeah, definitely. And so while you're going through the whole process, you always need to set yourself some kind of goals.
Yes.
Right? As a business owner, this is what we do. We need to set the bar somewhere, and then we are working towards exceeding it, obviously, and then pushing the bar a little bit further so we can go there, and so on and so forth. So is there any process that you follow when getting about the goals, or the way you set yourself?
So the one thing I can say, there's no, I think, set process. I think, I've never been like a New Year's resolution guy. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I think really my goals tend to compound year over year.
Okay.
And I think what really drives me and helps me with goals is going back to what I mentioned before, is having a clear definition of success and then working backwards, right? And do my goals align, and does my timeline align with what I'm trying to accomplish, right? And that helps keep me focused from a standpoint of, okay, are these goals realistic? Are these good goals? Do we need to increase them, decrease them, whatever it may be? And there's a lot of moving pieces, right? Because it's not just financial. Of course, a lot of people will, measure financials as a goal, which is a good goal.
That's right.
But then there's also the element of different things that you want to implement into your business, systems, processes, how do we scale a relationship-based business? And then you have personal goals as well too. So I feel like it's kind of a mixed bag. I think what really helps me with goals, there's a few things, and there's no magic pill or magic answer. It's really consistent, being consistent.
Oh yeah.
Constantly reviewing those goals, whether it's reviewing them or in your head, so that way you're not getting lost.
That's right.
Right? And those consistent daily habits that drive you closer and closer every day to those goals, and constantly revisit them, right? Not being afraid if you don't hit a target, right?
True.
I think that's where sometimes people set themselves up for failure because they're like, oh, I set this goal, but I didn't reach it, I failed. But you made 80% progress, right? Like you're still moving forward in the right direction. So, those are the things that I always try to focus on when it comes to goal setting.
It sounds like you've got the really flexible way of going at your goals or setting them up and then kind of reviewing as you go.
Yes, I would say that's about right. I think at the end of the day, the long-term vision doesn't change. It might change a little bit, but when you're looking at those short-term goals, yeah, I think there's an element of being hard on yourself, which I'm definitely one of those individuals, but I think there's also too an element of flexibility and realizing, okay, are we making progress, right? If we didn't reach the goal, are we making progress? And if not, what do we need to do to make progress, right? I think progression is a really important thing in business. I think for me, at least, if every year or every month or every quarter, whatever you want to call it, if we're making progress, whether that be systems and processes, marketing, financially, whatever it is, you feel like you're moving in the right direction, and I think that helps.
That's true. It's those small steps that you make and you see them paying back.
It really is true. Like you look at the compound efforts, right? And I can even go back to as far as, from when I started in this business to now, right? You start to see those days and years of pounding the pavement and putting in that effort starting to pay off year over year over year. And it feels good because obviously you're making progress and you're starting to see results, but in a lot of ways you still feel like you're scratching the surface because you're like, oh, what else is to come, right?
That's right.
But yeah, you can definitely go back now and say, okay, all of those consistent effort that I put in on a day-to-day basis, you see how you made progress. And I always use the example of, I have a fitness background. I always use the example of like when you're in the gym, right? You don't get the results right away. It's the people that are in there on a regular basis, consistent, that are always in the best shape and, look the best and all of that stuff, right? So I think we tend to get too suckered in with instant gratification because the reality is everything, like you said, is at our fingertips, right? It's who can withstand the grit on the day to day when it's ups and downs and lonely and some days are good and some days are shit, right?
That's
so
right.
The day-to-day consistency is really good, like important. And I know for me, having that structure really helps.
It's going through the grindstones, right? It's at the end of the day, do you agree with being able to, that we overestimate what we can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what we can achieve in 10?
I heard this quote again, actually, like 2 days ago. So it's funny that you bring that up. It is true, and I think it's tough, right? Because we talk about societal pressures. We live in this world where, you go on the internet, it looks like everything's so easy and success and wealth and
Vanity Fair, huh?
Yeah. And then the reality is it's not true, right? But you don't realize that until you're in the thick of it. And you talk to other successful people and you're like, oh, you mean you didn't make this overnight? Like took you 30 years,
That's right.
So it's really interesting, you bring that quote up because there's a lot to learn in that sentence for sure.
Segueing a little bit towards the history, the cultural background, also the heritage, but like everything that encompasses who you are as a person. Is there one thing or a couple of things that you think made you who you are from that perspective, that you still like have it in your backpack, let's say,
Yes.
that you go with through the life?
I think the one thing that I learned from a very young age was hard work and a good work ethic. So I've brought up my grandfather a few times. So he was a stonemason, okay? And very physical job. And I remember as a kid, like carrying the boxes of tiles for him, right? Or being outside helping my dad and my grandfather, build a deck. And I was always hardworking from a very young age. And that's kind of stuck with me through, now being self-employed. Sometimes people ask me, how are you motivated? I'm like, well, if you're not motivated, you should not be a business owner, right?
Sure.
So for me, it's never being afraid to do what's necessary and do the hard work. And then I think also too, it's facing issues head on, right? A lot of times people, when they're faced with adversity, they run the other way.
That's true.
I know through a lot of the things that, I've been through, in business and life, it kind of builds a certain type of grit that you take with you into business, that you're able to deal with issues as they arise head on, right? And obviously as a business owner, you try to minimize those issues.
Yeah.
But when they do arise, you don't panic and you're able to deal with those things. So I think those are the two things that really stand out to me. I think growing up in that blue collar family, you see that firsthand and how hard those people work to achieve success. So that's always stuck with me. And I always keep that in the back of my mind as I'm, doing the work that we do, because I kind of joke. I'm like, it's not a manual labor job, right? So I feel like we have it easy in a lot of ways, so.
It's an easier version of what the parents and grandparents went through, right?
No kidding, right? You look at some of the hard jobs that are out there. I don't sit here and say, it's physically difficult, but that work ethic, I think, carries with you as you try to achieve success, because you're willing to just grind and hustle and get to where you want to go, if that makes sense.
It definitely does. I would add that one thing that you carry with you, which I notice a lot, is the Italian way of using your hand gestures, and we can see that on the screen as well. Which is amazing, because it's like whole body speaks, right, as well, right? So that's a nice part.
I take that as a compliment. I think at the end of the day, you try to be yourself, you try to be authentic, and you want to be passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
That usually the hand motions, as you can tell, they just happen naturally, right? So
they take over.
It's true.
Cool. On a note of discovery, on the background, on the heritage.
Yep.
What is there out there that you want to discover in the world? Where would you go? What are the places besides, or even still thinking about Italy and Lebanon?
Yep.
Are there specific places that you want to go? Is there any other places that you want to go to?
Where do I start? So it's funny, we talk about this and being transparent and being real. You make a lot of sacrifices when you start out in business, and as far as traveling and these types of things. And this is the other thing where, I put a lot of those enjoyments on hold to build my business, right?
That's right.
So I have a newfound appreciation for these things because of the sacrifices I've had to make. And I think anybody in business can relate,
For sure.
So now when I start looking at where I want to go out and explore into the world, there's so many things I want to see. I think there's a few areas right now that speak to me. So we talk about Italy, of course, going back there, but Europe as a whole, there's just so much I want to explore there, Switzerland, Greece, Malta, Croatia, all of these amazing places, right? There's so much out there that I want to explore, and that part of the world I'm really drawn to at this point.
Okay.
Also too, and I think we talked about this off air, I have a brother-in-law who has now recently moved to Mexico.
That's right.
So I'm getting the firsthand playback of what life is like there, and I'm curious, I want to go and explore that part of the world as well too. So, we'll see. But I think in the near future, those are top 2 on the list, I think.
Amazing. And there are a lot of things that hopefully, though, the new vehicles that we are talking about, maybe there are some others that we are exploring as well, that we talked a little bit about, gonna allow you to travel more, get the whole family going as well. It's
100%.
there's so much more and outside of our small bubble usually that we live in.
It's so true. You know, when we look at it from a business perspective, you bring up a good point, because pre-COVID, it was a lot of in-person, right?
That's true.
Where now our business is, oh my God, I would say 95% virtual, right? And it's been an interesting transition, but it's gone extremely well. And I think there's been a lot of convenience for clients along that standpoint. And it's done a few things. Obviously, it's more efficient for us because now we can, you know, do meetings more efficiently. But I think it's actually improved client service because now we can speak with our clients more often. It's easier for them. It's more convenient for them. They don't have to tidy up their house if we're coming to their house or business.
Yep.
If the kids are running around or whatever it is. So I think it's improved the client experience. But then also on our front, from a business standpoint, we talk about travel, spending time with family, doing these things. We're still able to run our business and do it in a world where we can still have these enjoyments and have a little bit better balance.
That's right.
And one of the big things I've really tried to work on in business, I'm learning this is, and I still have a hard time with this, but is being present.
Okay.
And really understanding, okay, we have all these goals and aspirations, but we have to be present in the journey as well. Because I don't want to look back in 30 years and be like, I didn't go on a vacation, I didn't do anything, I'm an old man and I have money, but I didn't do anything.
Sure.
I'm trying to find that better balance. And of course, early on in business, it's not easy, but I'm really realizing how important it is because you can get bogged down in the day to day, you know? True. You got to have that balance and enjoyment in life, whether that's taking a vacation. And I think kids is like another experience that has taught me that is I don't want to, you know, miss that whole period with them and just working and then look back and now they're 20 years old, right? So It's hard as a business owner to find that balance because you're always striving towards these goals and things, but also getting to the point of realizing that if you take a vacation, it's going to be okay. Your business will go on. So it's a learning experience. You know, we're still learning along the way as well.
Yeah, you need to figure out that you're gonna survive. The business is gonna be good. And like
everything will be okay.
Even if something happens, it's still you can reverse it or work it out and get it going again.
There will, no matter what, there will always be things you have to deal with. So if you look at it from the perspective, okay, well, I'm only gonna go at the perfect time, you'll never go. So
true.
I'm definitely looking forward to exploring some of the world. Enjoying it with my kids, so we're excited. You know, it should be, I don't know where we're gonna go first, but those are like the top areas that come to mind, I think.
That's awesome. Just a short question on the note of virtual world.
Yep.
How you find it with connection with people? Because my experience, maybe I don't have enough of the virtual experience in my life, but I feel like, especially here, what we are doing here, I still a lot of people have asked me, can we do it online? And I'm like, there are a lot of layers to this podcast and me making sure the setup is right. We've got the good lighting, good cameras, good voice.
Great setup, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
On top of the food.
Awesome. But in the same time, then we have deep conversations, that we have deep questions that I'm going to ask you uncomfortable questions, which makes you feel the certain way. Yeah. It's a different way when you are sitting in your home behind the screen, which you can at any point in time just plug it off, and because you don't like my question, and in the same time you are here today pushing yourself outside of your comfort, as you said on the beginning. You haven't been doing a lot of this, so it is a challenge too, right? How you feel after this long intro, how you feel those relationships are made? Do you feel that you are good with having them 95%, as you say, online? Or would you like to have some of them back in running in different percentage?
It's kind of like a catch-22, right? Because when they're virtual, you can have more touch points, more conversation. I can speak with more people in a day, right, when it's virtual.
Yeah,
However,
they can cut you off at any point and say, okay, I need to go. I've got another meeting, right?
this is true too.
It's a little bit different than when you're sitting in front of me and say, okay, I've got to go to the meeting, but you will
Yes.
not leave me in a second notice, right?
So, and I think to your point, I think there's a convenience element, but I think there's also a time and place where sometimes those in-person meetings make sense, and we still do them, right? Where someone's like, these are going really well, I want to meet in person. Like it's a comfort level, right? So I think whether it's business or life, I think what's happened, at least for me, is you try to make sure that you're very efficient with your time, and that if you're going to meet someone in person, you're making the best use of it. Like we're having a good conversation. You gladly make time for this stuff to do in person, because there is, I agree with you, some element that does get lost in doing everything virtual and just looking at a screen all day. However, I say that we have some clients that we've never met in person. We've only met them virtually. So I think it really is a case-by-case basis, and every individual is different. But I think a hybrid is healthy, I don't think staring at a screen all day is healthy. I also don't think that meeting every single person in person is feasible either. We're in Toronto.
Exactly.
You talk about getting from one meeting to the next. It becomes logistically a nightmare at times, right?
True.
So there's pros and cons either way. But I think, depending on the scenario, those in-person conversations are you cherish those for sure.
Okay, yeah. Then we definitely agree on that topic. It's for me, myself, maybe I'm a stereotypical, or I'm thinking I've got some blocks in my mind, but I like the personal touch, because besides us sitting in front of each other and going deep in some questions, I can see your body language.
100%.
Which I cannot see through the camera.
No.
And you everything starts from here and down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I read one book which was about the negotiation part of the things, but also like techniques of body language reading is basically a lot. You can hide a lot with your hands. Like
100%.
even though that you've got the Italian and you need to your hands talk by themselves, 100%. But there are a lot of people who can control that.
Yes.
But a lot of us cannot control our feet, and those say a lot.
Yeah, like you see the people shaking their feet or whatever it is.
Even putting them in the different positions says different things, and
That's a good point.
But that gives a lot as well. Like you see that interaction going a little bit different levels too, right?
I think at the end of the day, I always try to be very respectful of people's time. And I think as long as the individual is engaged, right? True. Like when I have virtual meetings, I'm very engaged, right? If I'm having in-person meetings, I try to be very engaged. I think it really just depends on the engagement level. Like we have no issues doing things virtually because people we talk to are engaged, right? There's things that they want to learn, things that they want to implement.
True.
But yeah, it's a give and take. You're 100% right. If you're talking to someone and they're online and they're not really paying attention, that's probably someone you don't want to waste too much time with, right? Same thing in person, right? You're going to make time, go meet someone, you want to make sure they're engaged in that conversation. So yeah, I think being selective is also important as well, because your time is valuable, but I think the engagement is important on both sides for sure.
Amazing summary of it, for sure. Are you ready for bombarding with the questions?
Oh my God. Okay. Keep me on my toes here. Let's go.
Oh, we'll do a little bit.
Let's do it.
No wrong answers.
Okay.
So
are
whatever
these like yes and no questions, or are these answers?
They're gonna be answers.
Okay.
No, I'm gonna start with easy ones.
Okay.
Who's your ideal client?
Ideal client is usually self-employed business owner, has a family, typically 40 to 60, but again, there's overlap there. And ideally is someone we are aligned with and we connect well with.
Amazing. That's a great answer for sure. What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? As I mentioned earlier, I am a gearhead. So I attend car shows or anything car related, cruise nights, anything like that. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. When I'm not doing that, it's spending time with my little ones, taking them on nature hikes, anything like that. So those are my two things right now. That's
cool. And do you have your own muscle car still?
I do.
What is it?
It's a 70 Plymouth Duster. If whoever knows what that is, you can Google it.
Yeah.
It is currently stripped down to the bare metal as we speak.
Okay.
So it's a work in progress, I guess you could say.
I get you. What's your biggest problem?
Biggest problem? I think my biggest problem, I would say challenge. I wouldn't say problem.
Yep.
Our biggest challenge right now is, so when we grow our business, a lot of it is organic, right? Conversations like this. We talk about referrals, stuff like that. It's how to scale an organic or a relationship-based business without losing that touch. That is, I think, the biggest challenge.
Yeah, it is, and that ties nicely to what we spoke about just a second ago about the connection virtual, doing it in person, and so on and so forth, right?
Yep.
On that note, what are the note of your business actually? What are the financial lessons, tax strategies that comes to mind that you wanted to incentive, laws, creative accounting methods and stuff like that you wish you learned earlier?
Oh my goodness. I think the one thing that I wish I learned earlier was the tax system. I think you don't realize from a young age what implications tax have and how not all vehicles are equal from that perspective. So I think that would be the biggest thing. And then also, in addition, kind of funny enough, we talk about a lot of these insurance strategies, different wealth strategies. Before I got into the industry, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? So these were things that I learned, and it really opened up my eyes when I got into the business that no one had ever even mentioned to me before.
I definitely am on that. Like, if I wouldn't start if I didn't have my short journey with the insurance industry here in Canada, which took me 6 months, and that was it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't learn. It's the same way I'm treating my university degrees.
Yeah,
I learned that on the note of being selective, I'm really selective and always been selective about what I'm learning.
Yeah.
And high school throughout and then university, I was like the subject that really interested me. Like, there was diplomacy, there was negotiations, there was law, there was some economics that interest me, but some historical negotiations where I was like, no, that's it. Just score it and forget.
Let me get through it.
Yeah, exactly. That was it. But until I learn about the insurance industry here and the possibilities that it brings, I never considered, and even thinking about being your own banker.
Yeah.
Meaning using insurance policies as your own bank. Completely, I never knew about it until it popped out.
Yeah, it's not something you learn in a regular world, I guess you could say. Well, we talked about this, even the education system, right?
True.
They don't teach you about basic financing, right? So how are you going to learn about these things? So yeah, there's a lot of eye-openers along the way. I think one of the other eye-openers too is seeing how people became successful and realizing, how challenging it can be to become successful, right? Learning the true ups and downs that go through a business or go into building a successful business. You don't realize that until you're in the thick of it, right? So that's, I think, something too, if you learn that stuff early on, then you mentally prepare for what you're about to embark on, right? You know it's going to be hard, but you don't know until you're in the thick of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then I think the big thing about being an entrepreneur is saying yes to things that you don't even have a grasp on. And you're like, okay, yes. I'm gonna say yes first, and then I'm gonna figure it out
after.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good questions, by the way.
Thank you. What technology, relationships, tools did you leverage to get to speed up the process of winning?
So I would say one of the things that I've used, there's a few platforms that I've used online that are networking platforms. Okay, I've used different ones over my career, but that really helped expedite my success. I was never a huge fan of the traditional in-person. I know you're probably going to disagree, but the in-person networking events, because I found they were very sales pitchy. People were either there to party or drink or whatever it is, late nights, whatever it is.
And it's also a little bit different scenario because you've got hundreds of people and you've got like split seconds of connections.
Yeah, it's like speed dating, right? So I found for me, the technology that I leverage were some of these networking platforms. There's one that I use regularly. It's called Lunch Club, which I think I introduced you to. Right. And it's been amazing because obviously, again, you talk about goals, you have to be consistent with it. I use it regularly, but it allows you to meet people from different walks of life, have new conversations, open up new opportunities, and actually engage in meaningful one-on-one conversations. So that has been a very useful tool from a technology standpoint. I would say that's the one that stands out.
That's amazing. I definitely would recommend. I just started using it. I had one meeting so far, but so far so good.
Nice.
Another one. Ready?
I'm ready.
What would you do to help others feel that they belong?
Ooh, what would I do to help others feel like they belong? I don't know if this is a cheesy answer or not, but I just think being genuine, right? When you're talking to people, genuinely caring about listening to them. There's a lot you can learn when you just listen to people and allowing them feel heard, whether that's an individual, a friend, a client. I try to be an active listener, When somebody is speaking to me, I want to make sure I'm all ears and they have my full attention. So I would say that's what I would do. Being
here and now with them.
Yeah. I think, just being present, right? And, it's something that, I don't know. I think we kind of take other people for granted and the way that we treat people. And I was taught from a young age, like being respectful of each other. So I try to set a good example from that standpoint. But I think, the one thing that really stands out to me is listening.
Amazing. And rolling back towards what we spoke a little bit about in the beginning, which is a tribe. Yeah. Are you a community person?
So it's funny. I was waiting for this question and you're going to laugh at my answer. Well, you might laugh, but my tribe is my family, and it's interesting. So now having 3 young kids, that does become your tribe in a lot of ways, right? That is home, right? That's your tribe. However, I do realize when we talk about having a greater impact, one of the things that we want to embark on with the business is having that community impact, right? We talk about being contrarians and making all this positive change, but we have to take action as well too, right? True. So I'm in the works currently of exploring kind of that phase of business and to be more involved in the community and, give back in other ways. So it's kind of a work in progress, but I would say my tribe right now is my family, but we'll see how it grows.
Then from what I'm hearing, this is a way or next direction that you guys want to continue going with your business as well. So this is something that you're going to like after the podcast that we're going to talk about. Next part to this whole experience being finding those mavericks around us.
Well, and I think you and I talked about this, right? You kind of have that appetite for surrounding yourself with those people, which is why we're having this conversation. True. And yeah, you want to be around more and more of those people. That community is so important, right? It can be difficult to navigate, of course. But yeah, the moment you can build that community, and I know you're trying to do that, you're a good advocate for that. There's a lot of appetite for that. And I know other people that are like-minded have an appetite for that as well.
Saying about the community, the funny thing is I discovered it through my own journey of self-discovery, would say. Yeah. Do you know Simon Sinek?
Yes. Heard of him?
So
yeah.
I went through the rabbit hole of finding my own why. Okay. And finding why I need the community and why I'm going after building a community. Always been an advocate of that because my mixed background. made me feel not at home in Poland.
Interesting.
Because me having, like, if you look, even if you have a glimpse on the European map, you've got Poland, and on the east you've got all the old Eastern Bloc, which is all the Russians, part Lithuanian, Belarus, Ukraine, and on the west you've got the Germany. And Poland, being in the middle, have been divided multiple times,
of course,
by all the countries, neighboring countries. But in the same time, I've got the German, I've got the Polish, I've got the Lithuanian and Russian. So I'm a person who is like a connection of all this tearing apart and putting together again.
Yes.
And also I've got some Jewish roots, which makes me not really a thing to speak up about in Poland.
Yes.
Really challenging thing, which I have suppressed for many years.
It's tough. It's a different world over there.
It is definitely. But that whole journey of discovery led me to realize that this is the community. The community that you need is not necessarily the country you are in.
Yes.
It is the people that you surround yourself with.
And I think it's being around people that allow you to be yourself, right? You know,
True.
When you're finding yourself, you want to be around people that accept you for who you are and allow you to be yourself and want to see you evolve and grow, right? So it's a good example for sure. You know, that's not easy. Like, we're fortunate in Canada where, for the most part, we don't have to worry about those things. At least I've never experienced that. Whereas in certain countries, there is a reality to that, right? So
True.
It's interesting.
True. And like, there was a lot of things that you can think of. Even here in North America, I would see that it is beginning to be a struggle for white people even.
Yep.
Like, I know that I cannot say anything straightforward to a person of color because my color of skin is white.
Yes. Right?
Even though if someone would ask me, I've got all those countries in my blood. So at the end of the day, am I really?
It's become a weird scenario when it comes to that, where essentially if you're like a white person, you're evil. Like we're in a really strange period when it comes to that. But yeah, you bring up a good point. That's a whole nother can of worms for sure.
It is. It is challenging. I'm still thinking through it and trying to understand it. And yes, from one perspective we are, and my wife is trying to remind me that we are privileged in a sense that we have been born not into impoverishment, and we were able to get our education. We were able to leave our country, to live in Norway, then travel the world, visit multiple countries, then be here, set up here, and live quite comfortably.
Yes.
On that sense, we are privileged, but like, then again, another situation, like, who are we comparing the privilege with, right? Are we looking to people out there who, like Elon Musk or Buffett's of the world, have everything and beyond? Yeah. Or are we comparing to people who do not have anything?
And I think that's where it gets challenging, right? Because everybody's comparing, one race to the other, one person to the other. And at the end of the day, I don't care whether you're black, white, green, blue, yellow, whatever. Yeah. Either you're a good person or you're not, and we have to respect each other. And I feel like a lot of those values, unfortunately, have gone out the window, right? Where everybody's just yelling and screaming at each other, right? Respect, do this and do that, and think this and think that, right?
True.
So I think we've lost a lot of those values, unfortunately. And you would think over time these things would get better, but you're right. There is an element that feels kind of like it's getting worse from that perspective, right? So it's really strange. It's unfortunate, but we'll see how it goes, I guess.
True. It's like, I think we are going into, or society is going towards the direction of putting people in the drawers. Yeah. Like, this is who you are, and that's it. And like, from my perspective, let's get back to humanity. We are all people. Yes. And doesn't matter what color of skin. I'm gonna go to Cuba for 10 days. I'm gonna come back probably twice darker.
100%.
And does that make me a brown person? No. But what does it really matter?
I agree. You know, we're too caught up on these things that I think are not important, and we're missing the fact, like you said, that everybody is human, right? And I think if we just started treating each other like humans, there'd be a lot. The world would be a lot better place. But I'm not holding my breath for that to happen. You know, it's unfortunate. You see it in the day to day and just the way that people operate with each other. You know, there is just a sense of entitlement, a lack of respect for each other. I don't know what causes this. But yeah, I think it's unfortunate. That's to say the least, for sure.
That's true. Those are difficult subjects to go on. Like you said, catch-22. It is, and all of those will be. The thing is to be open to talk about it. Like,
well, and this is one of the things that I love. Like, we talk about networking and like using platforms. Well, when I do that, I'm meeting people that I normally would never cross paths with.
That's right.
Different backgrounds, different walks of life. And I could tell you how many amazing stories I've had or I've listened to from people of different experiences and different backgrounds. So I get a lot of enjoyment of that. Like, I want to learn new things, right? So I think if people, you know, you tend to just try to be very open-minded to a lot of these things because you don't know what you don't know. You can't go with what you just see on the internet or see on TV, right? You got to be open-minded and willing to learn and understand that person and where they're coming from. And then you can make your informed decision from there.
Sure.
But yeah, it is amazing. You know, I think we take it for granted, the diversification and the culture that we do have and how we can really just bring people together if we treat it in the right way.
For sure. And this is where this podcast comes in place for me, myself personally. It is challenging me to look and discover and be open to discovery and still like being curious and as you say, just being kind to one another and like don't put yourself in a bracket that you are xenophobic or you are racist or you are black, white, whatever it might be. It's like, be more human, be more genuine, be more kind.
Well, and I also I heard this example. I can't remember where I heard it, but it was somebody basically interviewing someone and they had a certain opinion on a certain topic, right? And then if you start asking somebody why they feel that way or why they think that way, you start to really uncover where they got those beliefs from, why they feel that certain way about a certain individual. So yeah, I think a lot of it is just asking questions, like you said, being curious and being open-minded, and why certain cultures do certain things or why people behave a certain way, right?
And there's a beauty to it as well.
100%. I mean, we bring it back to food, right? Sure. Like just being open and curious and how it brings people together, right? It's almost like a peace offering, like people, you know, brings people together, right? So yeah, I think if you're open and curious and if someone is willing to share, there's a lot of beauty in that for sure.
Definitely would agree. And on the note of the growth.
Yes.
What question would you like to be asked more often?
Oh. You know what? I think when we're talking about growth and the question that I'd like to be asked more often, or at least talk about more often, is in business, it's easy to get caught up in the business conversations. Hey, what did you do? Lead gen, marketing, blah, blah, all these things. But I'm happy when conversations tend to take a more spiritual route and we talk about self-development because I know that's played a huge role in my growth as an individual, which has relayed into growth in my business. So I would say it's that conversation.
So what would be the question though?
I would say, okay, if I had to put it down to one question, I would say, what was I hope I'm wording this right. What was the catalyst to make you want to go down the road of self-development, something along those lines, right? Like what was the revelation or what happened in your life or what experiences caused you to work on self-development and what were the results from that? I guess something along those lines. Hopefully that made sense.
It does. And you would like to be asked this more often. Cool.
And the reason why I say that is because I think it's so important, because when we look at success, it's at least what I determine success as being a well-rounded individual. And, you know, I know from my own experience, I've had a lot of lessons along that way, and I'm still having a lot of lessons, but a lot of it translates back to, you know, that self-development and working through those things. And it starts from within, right? So I know that is something that I like having conversations around, and I'm always happy when people ask me questions around that.
Amazing. And I think this one, I almost know what your answer is going to be.
Okay.
What have been the greatest day of your life?
Oh, the greatest day of my life. See, that's a tough one.
Oh, really?
Well, it's I'll tell you why. I have 3 kids, right? I, you know, have a wonderful wife. So it's like, how do you pick which one,
true,
right?
True.
You know, there's a lot of great moments along the way, but I will say this, okay? I'm going to answer this, and my wife will be happy. I'm going to give the spot to my wife. It's when I met her and we really started building on our relationship. And the reason why I say that is, one, without a good wife, there's no good home.
True.
Right? And then you don't have kids anyway. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. But also when we tie it into, you know, life and business, it's really a journey together as well. And you both have to be willing to grow. And I'm very blessed to have somebody that I am growing with, that has always supported my vision. You know, we both play very different roles, but both are very necessary in achieving success. And I also realize how blessed I am to have an amazing relationship, because not everybody has that. So I would say the best day of my life is when I met her.
I think this is the best closing remark that I had so far. Arman, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. You are a friend, and you are a definitely great conversationalist, and I enjoyed this meeting a lot.
Well, honestly, the pleasure's all mine. I am very blessed and grateful to be included in this podcast. So thank you very much for having me. And likewise, you're a great friend as well. So look forward to building on these conversations, many more to come.
I feel that we're gonna continue. We're gonna have definitely a take 2 on this in short while.
I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you for being here, Arman.
Thank you.
And it's a wrap. We dare you. If you are bold enough, hit subscribe, repost the rebellion, and don't miss out on next week's episode. It's going to be bloody brilliant. See you on the next one.